it was so difficult for us to feel at home with one another and with our lives. I was a rebel daughter, not knowing that my mother and my grandmother had each before me also been a rebel daughter. Home for us as black women was never simple. In the distant past, our ancestors had held allegiance to lands as disparate as Europe and Africa, pre-colonized America, and the island of Hispaniola. And in the United States, as if to echo the diaspora of our ancestors, home for us has consisted of different houses in different cities. Individually, we each traveled to distant places on a quest for home. My mother to Mexico, my grandmother on the vaudeville circuit, I to France, Spain, California. Our foremothers had also struggled to feel at home in the world, but I didn't know this. Like most Americans, I had little concept of history in connection with my family. No idea how recently, in fact, we had become Americans. Through 4 generations, we had been called by a number of names: Indian, colored, Negro, black, African American. Yet, to my mind, none of these fits. Each merely serves to keep us from feeling truly at home in America. My grandmother and mother never talked about the past. My mother hated everything reminiscent of family history. She even refused to sleep in an antique bed that had been in the family for generations. My great-aunt died before I was old enough to ask her about her life, about her mother. I knew very little about the 3 women I grew up with, and less about the women who came before them. In our family, the men's lives were well documented, but the women's were shrouded in mystery. In 1973, I was struggling to balance marriage, motherhood, and a writing career in New York City. I was in my 30s and had 3 small boys. It was a hopeful time. Women and black writers were coming to the forefront. And inspired by the women's movement, I decided to write an article for Ms. magazine about the women in my family. I remembered that my mother had once mentioned a diary written by her grandmother, Frances Ann Rollin, whom she had described as an ancestor, a terrific woman, a writer. I wrote to her and asked her to send it. From the moment I read the words Frances Ann Rollin wrote in Boston on January 1, 1868, "The year renews its birth today with all of its hopes and sorrows," she became my beacon, the foremother who would finally share with me our collective past. Born into a free family of color before the Civil War, my great-grandmother was an abolitionist and a feminist. She wrote about issues of race, class, and womanhood over 100 years before me. I was enthralled, but also puzzled. Why hadn't my mother told me about her while I was growing up? This question, with many others, sparked a search that went on for 2 decades. My children grew up during this time, and so did I. I came to understand that it was the pride of family that kept secrets and told lies, the pride that told of the men and not the women, the fair-skinned and not the dark, the privileged and not the poor, which had kept me from home. Chapter 1. The Women in the House. 511 Florida Avenue. The address conjures tropical colors and ocean views, but there was actually a certain austerity about the narrow 3-story row house in Washington, D.C. In the 30s, its front windows opened to the screech of metal against metal as the streetcars lurched and sparked their way down the city avenue. Its rear windows looked out on a tangle of faded back alley porches and stairways.